going to talk about interdomain mastery and procedural learning. This is going to be a part one of probably a multi-episode series here. So 3 things I want you to consider at the outset of training somebody something new. Consistency and repetition, constituent element and known recognition, and pitfall identification. These 3 things are fundamental to adult learning and something that you really need to focus on when your student gets past the age of somewhere between 24 and 26, usually closer to 24 for women, closer to 26 for men, maybe even older. So, consistency and repetition. They need feedback mechanisms. They need physical, visual, tactile, etc. clues during the execution of the thing you're teaching them. So in this case, for boxing, they need to have physical, visual, and tactile cues that let them know while they're engaging in the activity that they're doing it correctly. And this is a thing, so sometimes people like to get into the YouTube comments and say, oh, why do you teach it this way? There's a difference between doing a thing and teaching a thing the intelligent way. And when you know how to teach things, you have to make some modifications for the sake of transmissibility. And we're going to come to that later. But feedback mechanisms can be anything from rotating the foot, which helps you generate power from the ground up. It allows you to integrate all the different musculoskeletal systems between your foot and your fist. It could be keeping the elbow down, which is going to help you make a straighter line. Those are different examples. All right. They also need performance indicators. How do I determine my results? So this is after. When you throw an effective punch, the bag that you're striking will hop instead of swing. That's a good performance indicator of whether or not you successfully struck the bag in a way that's generally more mechanically efficient than not. And then gradual demand increase. So as you're going through this process of developing consistency and getting repetition, you want to work on gradual increase in how difficult you make the circumstances in which they're throwing the punch or whatever activity you're doing. So you want to crawl, walk, run. That means you want to give them the highest likelihood of success first with the least amount of complexity in the task. Then you want to reduce the likelihood of success a little bit and make sure that you increase the complexity. And then you want to make it so that they're drilling under more adverse circumstances so that they start to formulate different approaches to transition management and also in being able to apply techniques in a multitude of different circumstances. This is how you build resilience in a fighter. You don't want to throw them into a tank full of piranhas in the beginning because then they're ultimately going to fail. So, next, constituent element and node recognition. You as the trainer or the teacher need to know how to break down all your tasks into individual pieces. It takes practice, but it's a very learnable skill. This increases transmissibility. Sometimes you're going to have a student who has a stumbling block that you don't necessarily understand which part of the task that they're not understanding, and you have to break it down into pieces so that you can identify what they need extra help with. If it's not transmissible, then you're not being a very good teacher. So sometimes you have to modify, I brought this up earlier, sometimes you have to modify what you're teaching or the way you're teaching it so that a student can understand. That's just part of good pedagogy. Integrative intelligence. So you want to help the student take the new information they're learning and contextualize it to their existing experiential body. What does that mean? So everybody, as they go through life, they aggregate or they collect experiences and they put them together into a big corpus or a body of knowledge. And when you can take new information and contextualize it, add the context of your existing knowledge body, then you're going to trust it more. And the reason children, or one of the reasons that children don't do that, is because children lack experience. And so children need experts who can help them understand and try to take new information and put it in the day-to-day understanding that younger brains typically have. With adults, they have a corpus of experience, and they're going to contextualize all new information against that or with that. the more you can make them line up together, you can align their experience body with the new information, the better they're going to contextualize it and the better they're going to learn it and remember it. So it's important to be able to use integrative intelligence. You need to take an understanding of their experience and you need to teach them in a way that aligns with that. Then modify complexity is necessary. So just like we talked about up here, you want a gradual increase in the demands of the task. You also want to add new levels of complexity, and the more they align with the integrative intelligence piece, basically the more you can make the complexity mimic a type of complexity that they're already familiar with, the better they're going to succeed. And once you've done that a couple times, then you start adding new layers of complexity that are unfamiliar. And when you do that, you're going to have somebody who's also going to be turning learning into a process. Procedural learning is going to use a different type of cognition than rote learning. And that's something that I'm going to do in the next video. I'm going to talk about that more. So then you have to go through the after action review process, what we call an AAR in the Army. And that is essentially a pitfall identification. You want to know what you did well. The results are going to speak for themselves for both what you did well and what you didn't do well, but you should still go over it and you should kind of do a recap summary so that you can figure out a better way to do the same thing in the future or with another student. So you have to identify the pitfalls, and those are physical and cognitive. What are you missing? And you, as the trainer or the teacher or the coach or the mentor, need to be the person who first and foremost turns the arrow and looks at the self. If you're like, hey self, what am I missing right now? You need to watch tape of what your fighter's doing or what your student's learning, how they're learning it, and how they're performing the task that you're trying to teach them. After you go through that, you'll start to see the things that they didn't pick up. And ultimately that buck stops with you. And that's not a criticism, that's just you have to acknowledge as a sober teaching professional that, hey, I missed something. Then, once you figured out what you weren't sending, then you can figure out what they weren't receiving. And again, this isn't about pointing blame. Too many institutions are quick to assign blame in a way that is discouraging to the student or in a way that makes the teacher defensive. And either one of those conditions is going to be conducive to a successful learning environment. So this is more about just identifying so that you can solve the problem in the future. And then lastly, what are you both missing? So at the end of the day, there's going to be the unknown unknowns. And I hate to just take a trope and beat the trope to death, but that's what it comes down to, is there's going to be the things that neither of you are either good at teaching or learning, or there's something lost in the transmission from the teacher to the learner. When you can identify this set of things as they apply to both physical and cognitive processes, then you're going to be doing a lot better, because the next time you go through the teaching process of that information or similar information, you're going to be able to do it more efficiently. And that brings me to the meta-narrative of today's lesson. Creating a relatively self-correcting learner makes the learning process more efficient, which means you have more time to learn more things. And that's why I always harp on efficiency. When you're coaching a fighter, the first and foremost thing you should do is cultivate efficiency and self-correcting. Because if you can make them efficient, then every other aspect of the task is going to go farther. So what do I mean by that? If you make a fighter throw efficient punches, his gas tank lasts longer. His speed stays fast for longer. His ability to throw punches at all lasts longer. It's the same thing with learning efficiency. If you coach efficiently, and that means focusing on efficiency, then what happens is you have more time to teach the fighter more things. And over time, even if you're just giving yourself 5 minutes a training session to be able to teach new things, that 5 minutes over the course of a year turns out to be several hours worth of training. That's all extra stuff that fighter wouldn't be getting if you weren't teaching as efficiently. So I hope that's helpful. I think it should be. And I mean, if you're watching my channel, it's because you like the way I teach things. I know it's not for everybody, and I know that, there's a lot of boxers out there that might wonder why we do so much thinking about boxing, but like at the end of the day, fighters have to be thinkers. And it might be a tacit knowledge body. The fighter might not even know that they're thinking about fighting, but ultimately they are. There are underlying cognitive processes that when you focus on them, you can make your fighter better, or you yourself can be a better fighter. Thanks for watching.